All right. Well, welcome to the panel here this afternoon. We're featuring ultra-low power connectivity for consumer goods and other low power, very high volume deployments. My name is Fred Yentz. I'm the CEO of a consultancy company called IoT Launch. I'm very pleased to be here with a great topic that's brought to you by the IoT MDEM Council. They're responsible for a couple of tracks here on IoT. The IoT MDEM Council is a group of manufacturers and suppliers in IoT, and then we have 28,000 consumers and buyers of IoT. So it's a trade organization that's focused on speeding up basically market adopters, acceptance, and other elements of IoT that have been market inhibitors. So I'm very pleased to be joined by a distinguished panel of folks, and I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves, their company, spend a couple of minutes, and then we're going to get into some Q&A. We have a good little small group of folks here, so if there's also some questions at the end, think of them. And with that, I'll let you guys start. We'll start with you, Pete.
Thanks, Fred, and nice to be on stage with Carmen and Curtis. And my name is Pete West. I run the sales efforts for North America at Core Wireless, based in Virginia, and I've been at the company 18 years. I was in employee number 12 back when Core was a small company, and back then what was called machine-to-machine technology, which is now obviously IoT. Seen the company grow organically through a series of acquisitions to be a global leader in connectivity solutions. We've got just under 21 million devices connected globally, with presence through North America, Europe, Australia. We own a separate company in Brazil because of all the unique challenges of doing business in Brazil. And our job is pretty simple. I used to say that we help companies make dumb devices smart, and that's still sort of the case. But we really help companies with digital transformation, the journey of transforming things to become digitally connected. And we do that by helping companies build, deploy, manage, and scale. And we do that through our various connectivity solutions. So think, SIM cards, multi-carrier, multi-profile eSIM capability. We have platform and analytics to help them manage this at scale. And then we also offer what we call IoT managed services, where, for example, we have a very high focus on connected health, where people come to us like Abbott, Fresenius, Medtronic. They just want to be a software company, and they rely on us for hardware procurement, staging, kitting, configuration services, logistics, forward logistics, reverse logistics, and also some other value-added things around device certification. So if you have a project where you need to have PTCRB carrier certification, we do all that in-house. So our job is to simplify deployments, is to have our customers be able to focus on, I'll say, their core business. We're the best analogy is the classic iceberg, where we're below the waterline. Our customers want to focus on their business, so we're the technology partner behind the curtain that most people haven't heard of, that enable all sorts of devices. I think we'll probably talk about some examples of that a little later on.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Again, thank you for being here. It's good to be on stage once again. I think Carmen and I were on a similar stage a couple of years ago, so it's good to be back. Thank you to IMC for hosting this. My name is Curtis Govan. I'm president of Americas for floLIVE. I've been with the company for just under 6 years, and prior to that was also in a similar role for 12 years. So I've been in the industry for, I'll say it, 27 years. But it's been a really interesting ride to see what the industry has evolved into, and I see one of my friends and longtime friends there to the left. But what we do at floLIVE, we're a global IoT connectivity provider. What we do uniquely is we build internally in terms of our core network infrastructure, the SIM component. We build it internally, and then we deploy proactively. So where we believe customers need to be, we deploy ahead of when the customers need it. Our core network infrastructure is an example. And then we partner with global MNOs, local MNOs, and regional MNOs to provide the most aggressive and available coverage footprint. And on top of that, the highest performing network. So doing things like localizing PGWs, UPS, so that the data is remains in country, whether that's for security reasons, for performance reasons there. We do that directly there. And we like to think of ourselves as waking up every day thinking about how we make it simple for IoT applications to perform in the world, whether that's working with MNOs to provide them with the latest, greatest connectivity management platform, whether that's deploying core network infrastructure where our enterprise customers need us to do it there, or enabling MVNOs as well. So we kind of serve the entire industry across the world there if you look at the ecosystem of IoT. And we're growing rapidly there. I won't say the number of deployments we have, but we've grown tremendously in 2025. And I think if we'll talk a little bit later about what we expect for 26. But I will say, this has been, last year was an exciting year for us to see some new technology start to emerge. And this year, we've got some even brighter and bigger stories that are happening with new technologies and with AI.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Carmen Redondo. I'm from KYOCERA IBX. KYOCERA IBX is the Advanced Electronic Components division of KYOCERA. And we cover components, capacitors, connectors, filters, and also antennas, which is my specialty. I'm an antenna engineer, so I've been working many years designing antennas, and now my role is Director of Global Marketing. And we are helping our customers how to optimize the antenna performance in their devices, because even if it's a component, this product is not something that you look into a catalog. It's very important how you integrate it, how you validate the whole product need to make sure you get the most efficient of it. And yes, we have our own products. We have a standard or custom, and we have factories in China and Vietnam. And we have design centers all around the world to be able to help our customers in all this validation process. So we go from the very beginning stage of the products through the validation until the mass production. So when they go to certification, they don't find any surprises.
Well, great. You'll notice we have one empty chair. We may have a panelist that arrives late. I don't know if they're en route from the Venetian or something. I'm not sure. But let me set the stage a little different for the consumer goods. And we're here at CES. When you walk the halls, very few things you see that you think are cool aren't connected. So many things are connected. So many things are connected to the cloud. So many things are connected so you can play with them on your mobile device, whatever it might be. We're here to talk about, as Pete said, we try to talk to customers, let them do their business. Maybe they make toys. Maybe they make something else. We want to help them with the connectivity element so it's easier. So with that, Pete, I'd like you to start, maybe talk about some cool applications in the consumer goods space or other spaces that you've seen to give some context as we start.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, it only took 7 minutes for someone to bring up AI. Yeah, I feel like this whole week's been AI. So maybe we'll talk about it, maybe not. It's interesting because the Consumer Electronics Show, just over the last 5 years, has really transformed into much more of a IoT-centric show where things are connected over various technologies, whether it's a local network, Wi-Fi, cellular, satellite, multi hybrid type scenarios, and the networks have really from a 2G network 18 years ago, we could barely send a text message to 3G, 4G, 5G, satellite, CAT-M, NB-IoT, all sorts of stuff. So there's much more technology availability out there to connect these devices, and we're seeing it across a lot of different use cases. A lot of use cases around the wearable space, and I mentioned connected health. We have a very large customer base in what's called the PERS space, Personal Emergency Response System. The best analogy I can use, and they hate when I say this, but it's the iPhone I can't get up. It's these wearable watches that are connected via cellular to be able to monitor an elderly person or maybe an active elderly person that's going to be mobilized throughout the neighborhood to be able to monitor their location, fall detection, all sorts of stuff. So that's just one example, and it's a very fast-growing business. I actually brought something here today that's been in our booth, and while it's not on a consumer, I guess it sort of is because they're not buying it, but it's the pet that you love at home. And this is an example of a wireless dog collar. So their mission was to really transform the invisible fence industry to a wireless geofence capability rather than having to dig, lines in your backyard and, have a high cost to build this infrastructure to be able to track, whatever your pet's name is. I have Luna and Maisie are my pets. But they had challenges building this, from antenna design, right? I mean, how do you put an antenna in the collar, from the battery to what technology do they want to deploy? Where do they want to deploy it? They're like, I want to go Cat-M, but there's some countries that don't offer Cat-M. I need precision type, accuracy, but GPS is going to drain the battery of the device. I want to go global. I mean, so there's a lot of complexities to being able to really even build a solution like this, and that's where you've got the folks on stage is to bring the ecosystem together, bring the partners together to help reduce the complexity, time to market, time to revenue. At the end of the day, it's all about customer experience, and I think that's what you're probably going to see really that you're showcasing at CES around a lot of these wearable devices. I mean, and that's just consumer. There's a whole world of ultra low power when you think of like smart city, smart home, industrial IoT applications where devices need to be in the field for 20 plus years. I mean, so anyway, I'm kind of going on and on, but I just wanted to show this to you. It's a really cool solution, and actually it's backed by Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, if you heard of that person. That's pretty cool, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, you know what? I'd say this is one I've seen as well. It's amazing. Like you have your friends. I personally don't own a pet, but you realize how much people love their pets. And like my mother-in-law has a tracker as well from one of our customers that she uses to track him. And it's like, why are you tracking him? He's in the house all the time. But she loves him, loves Rusty, and so she's tracking him just in case. And occasionally, he's a puppy. He's only a year and a half old, 2 years old now. Got him for Christmas a couple years ago. But we see those applications. The other thing for us is trail cameras are really hot there. I think it's something that we were introduced to several years ago, and it's like, man, I'm from a small town. I grew up hunting with my friends. I didn't realize how many people wanted to watch the animals out in the wild, but there's a proliferation of them. If you're not in the area, there are millions of cameras out in woods all over the world now. So we see those. The other one, and I think you mentioned this as well, Pete, in the healthcare area, we have people that are doing glucose monitors, blood pressure monitors, remote health for video. Those areas are really growing for us from a consumer perspective. Of course, you have your old legacy IoT devices there, but those healthcare, I think, is the biggest area that I see that's growing tremendously there because it's more cost effective. The battery savings that you get with the new technologies like EDRX and PSM are really driving more growth in that area for us.
So Carmen, you take something that looks simple. It's just a little collar and a piece of plastic, and they've got a great business idea. But what things do engineers need to think about when they talk about like antenna design? When they're starting a design, what challenges might they have just to be able to connect effectively?
Yes, the antenna, everybody, so there are people who are really afraid even to talk about it. They said it's like a black magic there. But it's true that when you integrate antenna, there is so many factors that people sometimes don't even realize about. And I really like to explain to our customers and even our partners when they try to sell our products that, if you take one PCB with antenna and you have something very efficient and suddenly you cut with the scissors the PCB. You don't change anything. It's the same components. Everything is the same. You just cut it physically. And suddenly the efficiency, the power you are transmitting drops in half. And everybody was like, wow, I never thought about it. No? So when you look at the data sheets of the products and you see something, it's very important to understand what is the size, what is the position, because all that is affecting. So now imagine when you go into these complex designs, when you have speakers, you have LCDs, you have, so many things affecting. So you really need to go very in detail in all the process to understand. So either in IoT, there are two types of devices. Another is more standard, which you can kind of replicate reference design sometimes. But when you go into the consumer, most of the times it's something small, it's wearables. So this really needs the help of expertise most of the times, no? And not to consider the effect of the body. So imagine like in low frequencies, you can go down to 10 dBs. I mean, imagine 3 dBs is like you are losing half of the power you're transmitting. So imagine 10 dBs. So you get only 10% you are transmitting after that. So it's many considerations to have to account. So our goal is to bring the awareness, and we help our customers to design efficient devices, because without efficient devices, you won't have low power, right?
Yeah, and by the way, when you think of a wearable product, a wearable design, there's that extra step in getting that device certified because it is a wearable. So even more important to know exactly, the design of the device, the intended placement, and how that's going to react to a person wearing that device.
What I find interesting in the market is there's so many folks that need to create this connectivity. But as you can see just from the panel, there's multiple disciplines. There's hardcore engineering and analog and antenna engineering, which is not necessarily a common electrical engineering practice anymore. There's a lot of digital people out there. So, always make sure you're taking a look at, who can you call on to get the help you need to be successful. When we think about success, sometimes we think about global marketplaces. Where are you selling your product? Are you selling it in the U.S.? Are you selling it in South America, Asia, wherever? Depending on the type of product, you also have challenges around localization. Can the data leave the network, or excuse me, the country? Can the data leave the geography? And there's some new technologies there. Curtis, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the localization challenges that are solved now with some new technologies and standards?
Yeah, certainly. This is something that keeps coming up. I'll go back to healthcare. Last year, it wasn't last year. Time has passed. 24, we had a customer come to us out of the UK. Connectivity was perfectly fine. Performance was good. But they had a government mandate that all of the data needed to remain in the UK. So in our case, we had to deploy local PGWs in the UK. And they needed access to multiple networks because devices go all around. It was actually, as I mentioned earlier, nurses that go around doing care, but everything they put in is obviously needs to be protected there based on GDPR. And so we had to put those PGWs out so it kept the data within the country across 4 different networks and sub 50 milliseconds performance there. So that's one of the areas that we see for localization that we do just in general. And we do that quite a bit for other applications as well. But SGP32 is the one that I mentioned earlier, new technology that we've talked about in the last couple of years that are now coming into fruition. That's the next level of localization where you get, in any country you go into, you'll be able to localize with a SIM card or a profile from an operator. So think of a digital SIM that gets downloaded, and if you have a new phone, you've already done it. A digital SIM that gets downloaded to your application so that you're localizing wherever you go in the world. And this is one that literally every conversation I have, and I bet Pete would say the same thing, people say, what are you doing with SGP32? Well, we're ready. We're seeing that devices are ready now. Our SIM manufacturer friends are ready that are producing the RSPs for that. So that one is going to be really key for the next generation of localization.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a, we all grew up in this traditional carrier SIM world where you're locked in. You don't have this freedom and flexibility. What Curtis said is going to unlock that and give you the flexibility, the longevity, the future-proofing, the single SIM, the operational efficiency from point of manufacturing to deployment. So I couldn't agree more that it's probably one of the more exciting technology, well, probably is the most exciting technology that I've seen it in my career core, that is going to really add so much more value into every use case out there.
Yeah.
So not only is it localization for maybe policy reasons, as you said, with medical, it actually brings a big advantage to low power because the radio is actually on longer as it's navigating and roaming and going back to other networks. So there's power constraints that are alleviated as well when you start getting into the localization.
Yeah, very much so. I know last year one of our customers that's in the asset tracking business, and they have battery powered asset tracker there. They're in South America, and they're like, hey, this latency is killing our performance. So again, like, what do? It's localization, in either with SGP32 download for those devices, or you need to have local packet gateways. But the difference for the performance, like, if you're building something, you want to have the same performance everywhere you deploy. And if that latency is different from the US to South America to Asia to Europe, it's a major difference in how you go to market there. But now, as Pete was saying, now you just simply have the fact that I know I'm going to be in that country. I need to have that localization for lower latency, battery savings there. Then you just download the profile, and now you're able to have the same performance in terms of battery power and savings across the world.
Yeah, I was gonna. I mean, it's interesting because it's really a math exercise where you could say a roaming SIM is going to connect in 300 milliseconds. Native, sub 50. I mean, that matters over the lifespan of a device. And it's like if you kind of just do a math exercise, you'll see that there's huge advantages of reducing that latency to the bare minimum to get the longevity of that power, of the battery. Exactly what you just said.
So we talk about localization. Let's talk about IoT anywhere. So you might have a device that needs to be seen on the network anywhere in the world. There's something called satellite technology and NTN, non-terrestrial networks, that has become very, very common and something you'll see a lot more in the IoT space. But that might require a different antenna or some other technologies. Carmen, how would you approach the NTN space?
NTN is very exciting because it's bringing a lot of opportunities for the IoT world. Imagine that 70% of the world is not covered by terrestrial coverage. So imagine the potential, in the South America, in the Middle East, even in the States, it's a big country, not every place is covered by terrestrial. The advantage with the traditional satellite is that you have much lower power consumption. You are using the cellular modules to transmit also with the satellite. So in reality, at the beginning, you are trying to use the same type of antennas. So you want to have hybrid that cover all the terrestrial bands plus the satellite. But at the end, you are receiving very weak signal from the satellites. The signal is also circular polarized. So we are coming up with solutions where you can have circular polarization, and that brings a big advantage to the power that you can get. You can get better performance. It's also, you need to have into account when the signal is coming. So the satellite might be in the low elevation. We have customers in South America that they are trying to test NTN, and the GEO satellite is in North Hemisphere. So they are having issues. If you use a patch antennas towards the sky, then you don't have the good reception in the low angles. So we have came up with new antenna solutions using different technologies like LDS, which is laser directed structuring. We are doing the antenna directly on the plastic, so we can get advantage of more complex designs to be able to cover those low elevation angles and be able to connect this, to close this link with the satellite. So there is a lot going on, and I think it's a very exciting moment for these new IoT possibilities for the IoT.
So if you get it connected and you talk to a bird and you get it back on the ground and you've got to integrate it into your carrier network because it's probably going to talk to both satellite and terrestrial. So from the terrestrial guy's point of view, how do you deal with satellite?
Yeah, I'll say it's last year, the comment that Pete made earlier about SGP32, last year we made that comment about NTN, that it was the most exciting new technology coming on board. We had dozens of customers that were trialing it and doing proof of concepts there. Now we're seeing those products come to market. So what does that mean in terms of difference? The first thing that we look at is I have two fundamentally different technologies combined into one module, one device, a new upgraded antenna structure there. So that's the physical piece of it. Now you need to communicate that to the network, and it's different. So that's non-IP based data communication that you have, which is completely different there. So customers are now saying, hey, I used to send a message every 10 seconds. You can't do that with NTN, right? It's a limitation there. And then on top of that, you're sending them smaller amounts of data. Now, if you're just doing tracking, not a problem there. But what we're seeing, many of our customers, for example, that are doing a combination of video and asset tracking and vehicle tracking, like Okay, we can't send any video, but we can tell you where the vehicle is. So you see that reduction there, and on our side, we're having to combine the two, the non-IP based data as well as the IP based data, and having them efficiently switch between the two technologies is a really key and critical part. But I will tell you, we had a meeting with one of our early customers yesterday, and the performance of the overall system and the value add that they're getting is tremendous. They're in the business of tracking cattle, and the cattle move around different parts of the property, and they're not always able to be connected from a cellular perspective, or maybe there's no cellular at all. Completely changing the game for people in the cattle industry, adding some efficiencies there. And the key thing when you look at new applications, what's the return on investment? No problem. Like, it's almost a non-starter conversation there, because the ROI on it is absolutely easy for them to see, because they're able to deliver that cost savings and efficiency, making sure that animals are, when they're sick, they're getting them into the right place, when they're mating, all of the details there. It's a fascinating industry there, but we're seeing a lot of really good applications there, and we're adapting, right? So we're making it easy for them to pull those two technologies into one single platform, one SIM card there, and efficiently switch between the two technologies.
Okay, so we'll bounce around, and now let's talk about something very, very regional. Maybe you're in an environment where it's an amusement park. Maybe it's a smart city. Sometimes, we're talking a lot about cellular, but it might not always be a cellular game. There's a lot of unlicensed spectrum. Some of us play in the LoRa space. We might have Wi-Fi connected assets. When we say IoT, we don't always mean just cellular. So there are a lot of other technologies. I know that Core, you do a little bit in the LoRa space. You've got some solutions there as well.
Yeah, we see a lot of that in South America, in Brazil, where there may not be enough infrastructure, and you want to deploy, we'll call it a mass deployment of some sort of sensors, where the cost to have cellular in each sensors, it's too expensive. So you'll deploy this LoRa technology. Now, there's still a backhaul component where you'll have a gateway strategically placed somewhere, we'll call it in the amusement park, or on an agricultural, farming site, for example, if you're doing, monitoring equipment. So yeah, there's a big play there, especially if you're doing mass deployments and cost is a concern, or if there's just not the infrastructure. That's a very small portion of our business, but just like with satellite, it's growing, and it's usually the edge case, and you want to make sure that you have that tool in your kit to be able to serve that customer, regardless of the technology, the deployment. So we're seeing that a little bit more adopted. Also, manufacturing's a big one, a big play where you're doing even some private LTE. I did want to hit on the satellite thing though, because you mentioned trail cameras, and that's another interesting thing where people want to have these cameras, and and these are things where I don't want to say you flip a switch and you can enable satellite, but we're exploring some of that stuff in partnership with Verizon and some other carriers, Rogers in Canada, to be able to enable actually the existing devices that are already deployed on top of new design, new deployment. That's pretty. I guess that is pretty exciting, the satellite piece, not just eSIM. It's all sort of evolving. So obviously for everyone on this stage, it opens up whole new revenue streams, which is huge for us.
One use case that we've worked with a customer based out of Scotland, or excuse me, Stockholm. They have, we think about, we've got cellular networks, then we're going to go up to the satellite, so there's kind of like two paths. They have a cellular product that's a asset tracker that actually falls back to a LoRa licensed and unlicensed combination. And their use case is for pretty large products that are through distribution. And there's big lots where they park lots of these products where it's all LoRa based at that time. It might be LoRa based at a dealer, but then when it gets sold and you want to turn it on to have customer centric things that are remote, it switches to cellular. And the manufacturer doesn't have to carry the burden of the cellular right away. They want to get, most importantly, they get extreme amounts of battery life, because the unlicensed LoRa spectrum actually takes a lot less battery. So it's really about the use case. What are you trying to achieve? If you're selling a toy that might live in a home, maybe the right answer is Wi-Fi. maybe the right answer is Bluetooth. If you're selling something for a smart city, maybe the right answer is a combination of, you know, LTE and maybe LoRa or something like that. If you're, you know, tracking cattle and wildlife, maybe it's certainly a combination of satellites. So, you know, one of the things we want to, again, leave the audience with is you've got to think about what you want to accomplish. And then you start making some of the right technology decisions. So many people in IoT started with the technology and never got around, and they got boxed in on the applications capability because they might have started in the wrong place with tech. And you know, you probably see that in engineering with antenna design. I know we see it in the network. I know we see it in electronic and radio choices. Any thoughts on, you know, as we kind of come towards a close, we've got about, you know, 8-9 more minutes. If you're going to start a new design and you want something to live in the world for the next, you know, 10 years, what things would you be most concerned with today? If somebody in the audience said, hey, I'm going to release a design next week and it's going to do this, what should you be focused on?
Yeah, well, I think it's where you're going to deploy, how long do you want, what's the expected lifespan of that device? How long is it going to be in the field? And these sort of, like you said, let's come up with your purpose first, build the technology around it, but you have to have that roadmap blueprint of where am I going to deploy? Is it fixed? Is it mobile? How many years of life do I want out of that device? Is it hardwired? Is it battery powered? And then and that's what we do. Then we will work with the customers to customize a solution, because not all products are created equal. Not all use cases are created equal. So, you know, we kind of have like a menu of things we could kind of position to our customers based on some of those criteria. Because networks have sunsetted. They will sunset. Technology will go away. Will be introduced. So those are some of the sort of consultative questions we want to ask our customers.
I would completely agree. I would say the other thing that we look at is SGP32. You know, it's like, well, how do you get longevity out of a device? We look at the first part of what we've done with multi-IMSI and having multiple carriers available, the broadest coverage footprint, high availability, performance. The next phase is that eventually network sunset, and you know, not all countries, not all carriers will turn off one technology at one time. But literally, if you can get another year, another 2 years, another 3 years out, it's tremendous savings. I remember, 10 years ago when the alarm companies were having to remove all of their 2G devices, and like, hey, how long is it going to take you? Well, if we start today, we'll be 2 years doing it. The networks are going to sunset in a year, right? So the opportunity, or the network that they were on, I won't mention the carrier, was going to turn off in a year. So, you know, being able to move to another carrier with either a multi-IMSI solution like we support or with SGP32, I think that's going to be the next phase. This is like, the carrier's afraid of people just moving because of cost. The reality is they want to be able to have that flexibility from a technology perspective, from a longevity perspective, to have other options to say, carrier B is going to be available for another 2 years. I'm just going to transition before you sunset.
So after all those decisions are made, then you come to the hardware, where, and it's not only the antenna, I say hardware in general, because there are many components which are important, no? If you have many technologies, how you can optimize there, you know? You don't want to have different radios, different antennas, different, complexity there. You want to make it simple. You want the cost is very important in the IoT. So size, if you want to have, for example, if power is important, as we were discussing, right? You want to last for 10 years. Their considerations can use, for example, supercaps to have energy harvesting. How can you make the most efficient antenna to have the maximum use of the power from the module? And even battery size, in many cases, I see customers that they think about antenna and the battery at the end, and then they don't have a space, so it's not sufficient, and then they need to consume more power. So all these small decisions before you start making your design are very important to have a reliable and low power device.
So I'm gonna add a couple of things that I think are coming upon the industry like a freight train. And a lot of people aren't paying attention to it right now. We talked about lifecycle management and updates and making sure the device can live in different places. But we've got some policies that are upon us around security, around access. There's some regulators in Europe that are coming out with basically safe, secure standards, CRA, right? The opportunity to make sure that your IoT device has not been a breach or a threat surface in an enterprise or in a consumer device. The penalties for some of these breaches can be 2.5% of your global corporate revenue. These are going to be penalties like we saw when GDPR was originally initiated. One of the first penalties issued by the GDPR folks in the European Union was about $750 million to a very large multinational. So security is key. How do you secure a device? How do you manage the security of the device? And that doesn't mean that you set it and forget it. You ship it and leave it. Every time you do a firmware update, every time there's an over-the-air update, every time you're modifying this device over 10 years, again, I guarantee you, no one gets it right to last 10 years. You know, networks change, updates have to happen. Whenever you put new software out there, you got to make sure there's no threats or vulnerabilities. So just like it's kind of automatic on our cell phones, we get cool updates, or maybe on our laptops, we get a great update from Apple or Microsoft, and it just works. If you're building devices, you are the one that's now obligated to make sure that those devices stay safe, and you have to make sure that you have a mechanism to manage the security over that life cycle. So I would just remind everybody that, you know, connectivity is awesome, and connectivity brings amazing features, but there are indeed some policy and regulatory things happening. I'll leave you guys to, you know, one final parting shot if you've got a comment around maybe that or something else that you want to close with. But I'll start with you, Carmen. We'll come back this way.
So I was, well, I already mentioned a lot about antenna, but I think as a general comment, not in my topic, I think it's very exciting about, and we see more awareness about the power consumption of the devices. Before, people were using whatever component, and there are module makers and device makers coming to us, asking us exactly how we can get the best of it. And in terms of customers, we see more applications, how to optimize that. For example, and I know you didn't want me to mention AI, but we see a lot coming to Edge AI. So your IoT devices don't send all the data, but compute in there in the edge all the data, and maybe they will send just the conclusion, or even don't send anything because it's a false alarm. So we start seeing that more and more, and it's very exciting to see how this awareness is coming into the market.
Yeah, I will say, to your point on security, this is one of the areas that I think in the industry, and I don't think it's a secret that I'm revealing, that we've neglected. There's one particular part of the industry that has done it really well. That's in point of sales. Like, it's native to what they do. It's already industry standards here, but the rest of the industry has pretty much neglected it. But it's because we see more and more devices coming connected, and you have to realize that if you have an IoT device, that device is connected to the rest of your critical infrastructure. So if people get in, they get into the heart of your business there. So we know this is something that has been on the minds, and I'm telling you, we've had these conversations I have for a decade plus, and people will say, yeah, we need to do it, and they haven't done it. But what we're looking at now more and more is every time we're having this conversation, we're conversations about connectivity, we're adding into it, how do we make that more secure, right? How do we do it from a SIM technology perspective? How do we do it from a network side? The communication between the individual devices, between their application servers. So it's something that's definitely prevalent now, and more of the conversations are serious now, and people realize because of the government mandates, which sometimes that's what it takes. They're taking it seriously now, and like I said, we're preparing ourselves and helping customers get the right education so that they know what we can do to help them, right? And then they have to do their part as well.
We have like 1 second left. Just to maybe,
All right, thank you, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just real quickly double click on what Curtis said. I mean, it's 18 years ago. It wasn't even a box to check on a technology CTO's list of. It's got to be the biggest box. I mean, I think just yesterday or the day before there was some hack at some Roombas. Did you hear about that? Google it. It was like someone hacked into a bunch of Roombas and started using the voice command and spitting out racial slurs. I mean, this stuff is like in these devices are like connected. They could be used as weapons. I mean, forget the money. I mean, think of like the safety of people, the brand recognition. That stuff you can't recover from that. So, I think it's neglected. I think we need more focus on it. Maybe next year to CES we could try to get a security council together and kind of hit that one hard. But I'm glad you brought that up, Fred. And no, it's a big box to check.
Well, thank you all, and I want to thank you, the audience. But I would say I want to thank IMC because they're the ones that put this together. And when you're looking for a resource to ask somebody a question, all those logos on those banners on both sides of this auditorium, the stage, that's actually the thought leaders and the suppliers. We all do sort of different things. Some of us do the same things. But if you come into IMC, you have a question, we're all about making you successful. And if you've got a question about security, we have had a global task force that's been underway for about 18 months, working with GCF, IMC, the manufacturers, to come up with ways that are best practices to be secure, to try to comply with the policies and the standards, and to manage things like software bill of materials on IoT devices. So we bring you as buyers and as makers and as developers a lot of resources to be successful with IoT. So thanks to the IoT MTEM Council, thanks to CES, and thanks to the esteemed panel here. So
Thank
this
you,
was
Fred.
a great
Thank
session.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.